There will be no more. Welcome to the Last Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Chandler, here with my co-host, as always, Christian Miller.
What's up?
Nothing much. What's up with you?
I'm excited. This is a strange little movie we're talking about.
Yeah, it is.
It's actually not that strange. But it's a thing it's been a blind spot for a while. So like it's fun to talk about something that it's like more than a decade old that I haven't seen.
Yeah. Well, if you guys haven't been able to tell by the episode description, this is episode 2 of our Indiana Jones Mutual Rankings marathon. And today we are talking about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which is widely regarded by most people as the worst of the Indiana Jones movies. But we decided, for the fact that Christian had never seen it, and also because we thought it would be funny to put Temple of Doom last, we'll be talking about this one as our third favorite. And because I have watched this movie a lot, and Christian, this is your first time seeing it, so for a lot of this episode, I would like to just talk about your reaction to having never seen this movie before and kind of returning to Indiana Jones with this. And we haven't even seen the good ones yet. And your first thing back to Indiana Jones is one you've never seen and is probably pretty terrible. So first off, I would just like to know your overall reaction to watching this for the first time. More than, like you said, more than a decade later.
I don't get why it would elicit strong negative emotions. Because nothing about it seemed like it was breaking the spirit of the movies that have come before it. None of it feels like it's trying to be inconsistent or trying to mess with what makes those movies fun by doing something else. It all just felt like a fun, innovative way to play with it. That being said, it's not particularly compelling. So
yeah,
especially through the first half, I just was not very hooked.
Yeah, so would you put this below Temple of Doom, or would you keep it above after seeing it?
I would keep it above Temple of Doom because
okay.
Temple of Doom frustrates me more from a anthropology perspective, I guess, and just its depictions of people, and there is better dialogue between characters, better character interactions, I think, in this one. Yeah. Overall, not that they were bad in Temple of Doom, I just think there's more of the good stuff in Crystal Skull.
Yeah. Well, I just want to tell you some awards that this movie has won. And I know you said you don't know why there's a bunch of strong negative feelings towards it. And I don't really either. I think I agree with you that I like this one better than I like Temple of Doom. I think Temple of Doom may be my least favorite. But some of the awards, I as the IMDb guy in recent episodes, I like to just randomly look up the awards that movies have won. And for one, they won sequel that shouldn't have been made. So, okay, good for them. They won the award for biggest disappointment of the year. Let's see, where's another funny one? They did win best original score in 2009, which it's
they
John
won
Williams.
Or were nominated.
They won. It was an International Film Music Critic Award. It wasn't
Oh, I thought you meant the Academy Award.
Oh no, none of these are anything great. They're all just random little things. A Razzie Award, I don't even know what that is, but apparently they won a Razzie for worst prequel, remake, ripoff, or sequel.
Yeah, that's the main hateful award show, basically.
Yeah. There's weird notifications. It won the Teen Choice Award for the choice movie actor in an action adventure movie. Shia LaBeouf won that. So good on you, Shia LaBeouf, I guess. Yeah, that's all the funny ones. And then they won some actual best action movie or something, whatever. But yeah, they didn't win any like big awards on this movie. Um, but yeah, I also don't think that any of like the super big hate. I think a lot of that could come from it just being a sequel that was made so much longer after the rest of them, and um, I don't really think after the Last Crusade, I don't really know how many people were really begging for another Indiana Jones movie. Um, and the only thing
The
like
thing to always consider about this is that the people who fell in love with the movies when they came out um, were kids, and they're just not the same person when they're in their 40s
yeah,
watching the new installment.
yeah,
So, something we've always talked about with Star Wars.
yeah. And I mean, I know a lot of people don't like the whole like alien thing in this movie. Um, I think the aliens are kind of cool. I think they're a little underused. Like, I mean, you and I talked about this before. I wish the aliens would have done something more than just stare intently at at Irina at the end of the movie. Um, but as a whole, like I kind of like the alien idea, and then the El Dorado being a city that was just built by aliens. Was it built by? I still don't get that. Was it built by aliens, or did the aliens tell the humans to build it for them?
Yes. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the many unanswered questions of this movie that I mean, put it below the other two, but there's still some definitely unanswered questions. But I think we should start at the beginning with uh, Indiana Jones and his partner Mac had been captured by these Russian spies because their leader, played by Kate Blanchett, Irina Spalko, they need to find this like they want to find the crystal skull or this alien that Indiana helped to excavate about 10 years ago. Um, and yeah, so they have this really weird scene where Irina, like I guess, tries to use the Force to like get information out of his head. That's kind of what it feels like. And they use some crazy little magnetic stuff, make Indiana Jones look super smart. Um, using the magnetic field of this alien carcass to find it, and then he ends up as he's trying to get away, he ends up in like a nuclear facility, and survives an atomic blast in a refrigerator. Yeah, this is like the biggest issue I have with this movie, which I know is really picky, but it's like, first off, he should never have survived an atomic blast in a refrigerator, but also when he got out, he was so close to that explosion, he should have had radiation poisoning and been like in bed for like weeks or dead. But it's Indiana Jones, he can survive anything. So, I mean, I remember when I was really little, really loving that scene, really loving the nuclear facility and the opening scene of him in the warehouse. And so it felt really nostalgic for me. I don't know. What's it like watching that for the first time being 20? Like, is it just as enticing?
I mean, I don't have the nostalgia part of it. Um, are you saying that it was nostalgic when you watched it as a kid?
No, it's nostalgic like now watching it. Like, I liked it because I just remember liking it as a kid. You know what I'm saying? Like, when I was little, the whole scene of him like finding the thing using metal and shotgun shells and all that stuff, like, and that chase scene through the warehouse, I was like, oh, I love this. This is so cool. He makes a witty joke right here. Like, oh, I thought it was closer. Like, that's funny. Like, to me, being like 10, I thought it was hilarious. Um, and so like watching it again, I can't help but like it just because like remembering that how much I used to love it. Um, I don't know if it's actually as good as I think it is.
My experience was just like, I think, especially because we're doing a series about these movies, each one I approach as like, okay, what makes this good? What makes this something that I don't like? And also, like, what is the DNA of an Indiana Jones movie?
Mhm.
And I can't help but think of alternatives and how I would do a story within this genre, within these like just all the sort of rules, I guess, of the series.
Yeah.
So as the movie was starting, I was just seeing all the different things about it and comparing it to what I've seen, and trying to meet it on its own terms, but also sort of I could already see some cracks and like how it wasn't, not because it was different, but just because it was not approached in an entirely fun way in the beginning. I just wasn't super into it. It didn't really help that the warehouse looked very obviously a CG effect. So
Yeah.
they were like extending the warehouse to be like a mile long.
Hmm.
Like there are obviously parts of it that were a physical set, but like it was very obviously done. And I think it would all these concerns would go away if just like Irina was like just differently designed, I guess. Like the wig is very
The wig is weird.
off-putting.
I don't like it. Yeah.
I'm not saying that she needed to be like lose those personality like and those like character aspects of her design, but there
Hmm.
could have been more detail that like would have really brought more life rather than just a plain gray jumpsuit. Like you
Yeah.
could keep it gray but make it more like of a military leader thing, or you could have like her wear artifacts from things that she's pillaged as if she's like, you know, really displaying the occult stuff that she's into, or like a tattoo. I don't know, like something that like really like make her menacing and show like what she's into. I just like it's not like it's like amateurish. I just think that there's like a lot of other things that they could have done to like add flair and character. One of the
Yeah.
things I said to you off mic once was that the beginning scene of the Elvis playing over the car speakers as there's like a drag race
Yeah.
is really only there to announce that it's in the 50s and because George Lucas did American Graffiti and it's a little fun homage.
Yeah.
But it's like knowing later that Indy's in the car, I kind of would have rather seen his perspective because like I think it would just be kind of funny to see him in the trunk of a car hearing "You ain't nothing but a hound dog" and like swerving left and right and not knowing what's going on, and then boom, he's in a warehouse surrounded by Russians.
Yeah. I almost think it also would have been funny if they did show the outside perspective, and then as they start swerving, it just cuts to the inside of the trunk and you just see him like hit the side. And it's like, oh, and that's how they reveal that he's in there. Like almost seeing what they're doing, watching them have a good time, and then just immediately cutting to Indy in the trunk of the car, I think would have been funny. Um,
And this isn't to say that like I have mega screenwriter brain or I'm the smartest person ever. I
yeah.
just like it says something that like this movie does not transport me to somewhere else.
So I agree in the fact that like I think the first half it's almost the opposite of Temple of Doom, in which I prefer like the first, or I prefer the second part of this movie, but the first half, like you said, is a little weird. Like it's, for me, it honestly just feels like the plot's a little all over the place in the beginning because, like, all right, Indiana Jones being captured, they're finding the alien. Cool. Well, now they're gone. Now he's having to like escape this nuclear facility. Cool. Well, now he's being interrogated by like these guys, and apparently he was in the military now. Like, I don't really remember. Excuse me. I don't really remember in any other movies if they mentioned that he was in the military at any point, but they mentioned like, well, he was a colonel and stuff. Not that that's a huge deal, but it's just like it's cutting in between these like different scenes very kind of like almost kind of harshly in a way that it's like, it's almost a little confusing or jarring that like there's details in it that I just now noticed as, a 20-year-old,
As
because
someone who understands adult language now.
yeah, and it's like I don't, I guess it was purposeful that they were making it for adults because the people who grew up with Indiana Jones were now adults, but also like it was a little confusing to me as a kid. I really didn't understand the first part of the movie. It was just like, oh, action, and like finally we're
As
getting some
someone who
action, and
understands
then this
adult
part was like
language
super
now, yeah.
boring to me when I was little because I didn't understand what was going on, and I don't know. I think that just makes the last half of the movie seem a lot better because it's a lot more straightforward and it's a lot more like on par with an Indiana Jones style movie where it's, oh well, he's going after this thing, something's happening, he's with his sidekick, oh, the bad guys are now getting it before him, he then has to get it back, and then maybe do something a little bit with them, a la Last Crusade, how he has to work with I can't remember her name because I haven't seen the movie in forever, but the blonde girl who happens to also be a Nazi, I
Also,
think. Yeah, who also happens to be a Nazi, but he's gonna work with her a little bit. Um, so yeah, the second half of the movie is very much more Indiana Jones than the first half. And I think I mean, do you think the same thing, or am I just pulling this out of my butt?
no, you very succinctly described how basically all the Indiana Jones movies work.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think
Also,
there's anything wrong with. I mean, it's a formula. It works. It makes compelling stories for the most part. Um, I say go with it. So, uh, we then meet probably my favorite character in this movie again, which is not Indiana
no,
Jones,
you
but
very
Mutt.
succinctly
I don't know
described
why I
how
love Mutt so
basically all
much.
the
I think it's
Indiana
because when I was
Jones
little, I
movies
wanted to
work.
be Mutt. I told you while we were watching that I used to have this like, it was like a foam jacket, but it was made to look like it was leather, and it has like Mutt written on it and all of his patches that he has on it, and I had the sword that he uses, and his switchblade knife as a toy. Like I wanted to be Mutt so bad. Um, I also just like thought his personality is a good um contrast to Indiana Jones. We've never had one of his sidekicks that is super dislike him. Like we've always had the female characters that have been different from Indy, and then we've had, you know, in the first movie we had Sapito in the first bit of the movie, and then we had Short Round, and then we had his dad, and they all kind of have like the same motivation as Indy, and now we have Mutt who's like just off the walls, like doesn't care really. He's in it for saving his mom and finding and finding Oxley, and that's about it. And then he eventually turns and becomes more like Indy by the end of the movie because it's his son.
It's interesting because um like I don't know, all the different choices they made for this movie was like it's been like 20 years since the last indie movie, and they're jumping ahead 10 years, and it feels the time jump is like not as the time jump in the world of the story is like it's interesting because
Mm-hmm.
real life, and obviously different like I don't know, all the different choices they made for this movie was like it's been like 20 years since the
Yeah.
last indie movie, and they're jumping ahead 10 years, and it feels the time jump is like not as the time jump in the world of the story is like half as much as real life, and obviously different eras. But it definitely feels like they're taking the story where the viewers have progressed, and growing up, having watched the indie character ascend to basically modern pop culture status, as he's like one of the he's based on like pulp heroes of the 40s, but he's like a version, a more modern version that's like sort of come out of the late 20th century, and he like sort of has that sort of reputation within the 50s in this movie.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to contrast him with Mutt, who is like this. He is not pulp at all. He's like a real depiction of a teenager in the 50s. Not every teenager was like him, but he was part of a pretty substantial countercultural movement, where he's a greaser, rides a motorcycle, wears a leather jacket, gets into fights at diners. Um, like I think it was pretty interesting to contrast this like pulp status action hero basically with you know just just a normal kid who saw James Dean and was like, I want to be cool like that. But like he's not, like Mutt isn't larger than life. He thinks he is cool, but like he doesn't do that much with his life.
Yeah, I know a big thing in the community with
So
when
yeah,
it
it's
comes
very
to Mutt
it's
being in this
I
movie,
still have like
and I would love to hear your
I
opinion
think they
on
could have
this.
done more
Is that
interesting things with the
most people,
era,
when they heard that there was
namely
going to
how
be
they
another young
deal with like the nuclear
male
era, the
sidekick
Cold
for
War,
Indiana
and like
Jones, they wanted to be Short Round,
the Red
but
Scare.
instead they had
But like in
Mutt.
terms of their characters, I
Um,
like how they
what
brought
is
that
would you have
piece of
rather had
history
Short Round,
into
or do
their
you like
characterization.
the Indiana Jones has a son dynamic?
I think both are interesting because from what I just said, I like the Mutt character. At the same time, though, this is 2008. Um, it was definitely more prevalent to assume that you needed to have a white leading male in your franchise, and so it's kind of weird that they didn't. I think both are interesting because from what I just said, I like the Mutt character. At the same time, though, this is 2008. Uh, it was
It was
definitely more
also considered
prevalent
the worst
to
movie.
assume that you needed to
It was
have
like at the time,
a white
Temple of
leading
Doom was
male
also like the
in your
worst one,
franchise, and
and
so
so they were
it's kind
probably.
of
I mean,
it's
George Lucas
weird
probably
that
had.
they didn't. It's it's bad and like
That's true.
worth questioning, but at the same time, it's just normal for the time that they would just not consider bringing back Short Round and feel the pressure to get a modern star who grows up and they come into contact later in life. Short Round's already there. You don't have to explain away
Yeah.
some history with a long loss. But it was not maligned. It was still like it was good enough to get them a third one with a bigger star, Sean Connery, to come for the third one. But like if you want to deal with a character from Indy's past who grows up and they come into contact later in life, Short Round's already there. You don't have to explain
Yeah, I
away
agree. A Short Round would have
some
been
history
awesome
with a
to
long
see
lost
him grown
son.
up, see whether he still is like.
You already know who Short Round is.
You must call him Dr. Jones.
So
Like,
he would
see
have
if he's still
seamlessly
like
been
right beside him in all
able to
things, or whether
come
he's
into
like
the
has
fold.
has like a change of motivation, or. But
So
I do
on
love Mutt,
in the
and I
sense
love
that
the
like
dynamic because
it was already right there.
I mean, one of my favorite things is
I
when
am
Indiana Jones
disappointed
is
in Short
lecturing him
Round, but
about
I
how
think they
like
still
it's
did
fine that
something
you didn't
interesting
finish
with Mutt.
school, do what you love, don't worry what other people tell you. And then as soon as he finds out that he's his son, he's like, "You're gonna go finish school, like you're gonna go do this." He's like, "Well, I wasn't your father then." Um, like that's as much as I don't really like that whole scene in the back of the truck. I think that argument between Marion and Indy is a little weird. I'm not a huge fan of all the dialogue. I think that one little fight between Mutt and Indy is pretty funny.
That truck scene it's when it got good for me, honestly.
Really, I think right at
in terms of the overall story.
yeah,
The action scenes I liked, like the motorcycle chase through the library.
yeah, I did like that scene a lot.
Like when Indy says to the student, like, at some point you just gotta get out of the library, and then rides out of the library.
Yep.
That was a great gag, but like that truck scene is for it's when it got good for me, honestly. At least like in terms of the overall story, some of the action scenes I liked, like the motorcycle chase through the library. Like when Indy says to the student, like,
Yeah.
at some point you just gotta get out of the library, and then rides out of the library. That was a great gag, but like in terms of being really invested in the characters, wasn't until that midpoint where he was confronting Mutt and Marianne.
Yeah.
I just feel like
I
don't know.
think another thing
some of it's
that
like,
makes
oh yeah,
the first half
normally
of
the
this
movie
movie
is divided into
a lot
two halves.
less Indiana
you know?
Jones than I would prefer
where
that's not even addressed.
things
Like
really
as
kick into
soon as
high
he gets
gear at the
captured by the
midpoint,
Russians
and
again,
oftentimes
it's like
you're not
never
introduced
addressed
to
again.
major
It's the fact that
things
the FBI
until the
is
midpoint.
after Indiana
But
Jones.
I would have personally preferred to see
Like
Marion early on.
it's like a whole thing in the first half of the movie, which
But it's good.
makes it less Indiana Jones because normally he's just kind of like off doing his thing. The people he has to worry about are the bad guys who are also after the same thing as him, or like another country's military. The third one he had to worry about the Nazis coming after him. Like now he's worried about the American FBI coming after him for like I guess war crimes or something. It's like what? Like that was a little weird, and they don't mention it for the rest of the movie. And he gets his job back even after like the FBI basically makes him resign or get fired. Or, but yeah. Anyway, we don't like you said. It gets good at about the midpoint once Marion's introduced, and we're introduced to the dynamic of him having a long lost son, and we meet Oxley, who
Mhm.
I think is a great addition to the movie for many reasons because in previous movies, it's been a thing of, you have either these people that Indiana Jones finds and he is having to remember like history and having to decode like historical documents. And it's always been like he's finding these old manuscripts or old documents from ancient civilizations and decoding them. But in this one, what he's decoding is a person and not like an actual document. Like Oxley's just like not really gone crazy, but he's like I guess almost enlightened to this group of aliens that came down for the Mayan people, and it's the hunt for Oxley's knowledge and not the knowledge that a piece of paper can hold, which I think is a new dynamic that I really liked.
That's a good observation. Yeah, and especially, I think that's a good new development in the franchise because like there's a lot of more complicated things that Indy's dealing with throughout the movie, whether it's these new government officials who don't trust him,
Mm.
or reuniting with an old flame. And that's a
That's
good observation. Yeah, and especially, I think that's a good new development in the franchise because like there's a lot of more complicated things that Indy's dealing with throughout the movie, whether it's these new government officials who don't trust him, or reuniting with an old flame and having a son. Uh, it's like definitely feels like this like important sort of thing about growing older, I guess maybe that like you start to have to face um
Yeah,
these more
he was
deep
in
personal
Raiders
things
of the
that like
Lost
I
Ark.
don't know.
I know.
And
Because
the
remember,
way
there's
it's
the
not done
scene
well
at
is
the
like I don't
beginning
know who
when Indy
Oxley
is
is
talking
entirely. Like I thought he
to
was gonna be like this character from the movies
Charles
that I
and
forgot about, but
the
he's
guy
entirely introduced
Marcus,
here,
and they're the ones who like send him
or
on the
something like
mission to
that.
go get
And
the
then like
raid,
the other
the
professor
arc.
at the
Was asking permission to go, so
uh,
he's in that scene.
university, was he in the
Um,
other movies? I
and
still
I
don't even
think
remember.
oh, and he's also in no, he's not. Only Marcus is in The Last Crusade. So I think he's only in the first one. And then this one.
Who's Marcus?
Marcus is the guy that they said died. Remember, he said first dad, then Marcus. And Marcus has the statue that Mutt hits with his motorcycle and it causes the head to fall into his lap. He was another teacher at the school who was like friends with Indy and his dad.
But wait, were you saying that Oxley was in another movie?
Oxley was not.
Who's
Oh, I thought we
Marcus?
were talking about Charles, the other professor. But no, Oxley was not in any of the other movies. This is the first time we've mentioned him. Um, but yeah, no, it's just like he's such a cool addition, especially once he like gets his mind back and he's not just like
But
crazy
wait, were you
forever,
saying that Oxley
which
was
is
in
a
another
good
movie?
payoff, I guess, in the end. And then I just remembered the waterfall scene, um, where it's an example of actually just murmuring random stuff
Hmm.
and it actually meaning something. When he's like three falls or three drops or something like that. And they have that scene where they just go over one
Yeah.
waterfall and they recover, and they go over another waterfall and then they recover, and they go over a third waterfall. After Marion decides to drive off a cliff,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, they did her character perfectly in this movie in bridging her from the first movie into this movie. Um, I think she was a fan favorite because she's the only real like she's the only female lead that we've had in an Indiana Jones movie that will like stand up against Indiana Jones in like a meaningful way that he doesn't just like laugh off,
Yeah.
you know. We get that with Elsa, and we get that with wow, we just watched this movie. Was name Willie? Was that her name? Um we get at both of them, like they kind of like try to stand up to Indy and he just like laughs them off, but Marion's the only one who's ever like been able to really put Indiana Jones in his place sometimes, and she does it again in this movie multiple times. And it's great to see him challenged by someone who's also a good guy. Um, what do you think about Mac being a triple agent, a triple double agent?
I don't know. I guess I didn't really trust him much to begin with. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not a lot of weight is put into a lot of the supporting characters in these movies,
Hmm.
or like I remember just like looking at the cast, and it was like it struck me how like different cast were like I don't know. I guess I didn't really trust him much to begin with. And then you had a bunch of people you've never heard of.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's not a lot of weight is put into a lot of the supporting characters in these movies, or like I remember just like looking at the cast, and it was like it struck me how like different casting is nowadays, where like you had the core cast, and then you had a bunch of people
Yeah.
you've never heard of. Where like nowadays, almost every movie is like an ensemble, and even if it's not, the supporting characters are at least like on some really fan favorite like TV shows that I
Hmm.
recognize and I like know their comedy careers or whatever. But like these are like entirely just nameless, faceless Russian goons and stuff like that. And and that, no like disrespect to the actor who plays Mac, but uh, because of this sort of casting thing that's going on in Hollywood right now, there's a different approach to side characters where like a lot of times movies have
Hmm.
side characters that like
Well,
are
I think
really
I would
meant
have.
to
I
have sort of a personality in
Yeah.
a different way than this movie approaches, or like 80s movies sort of had it.
Yeah.
Where like in the 80s, a lot of
Hmm.
those
And I
characters
think I
just
would
sort of
have.
it was
I
just
think
sort
I
of
would have
like a
felt the
you
double
get in, you
agent
get out.
slash
You're not
triple agent
stealing away from the
twist
stars.
more if we would have known
Attention, you
Mac
know.
for longer, because he
Um,
like he
that's an
betrays
interesting
him in like the first 10
thing to
minutes of the
explore.
movie or
Movie
15 minutes of the movie.
stardom and
So it
like
automatically
bit
makes us
players
not
and how
trust
the
like we
MCU
don't trust him
changes how
from the
people think
beginning.
about
And then when he's like, "Oh, I
supporting
was just a
characters.
double agent." It's
Very
like, "Nah, you're
strange.
still sketch, man. We've never actually seen you do anything that helps Indy other than right now." And like that's just like super sketch. Um and he ends up working for the being a Russian spy anyway. Like in the end, he's actually like working for the Russians. So I wish we would have seen him be like good for longer, and then maybe the twist would have been a little bit more of a payoff. Um, but one
Yeah.
thing that I didn't realize until like very recently is that this actor who plays Mac is the same guy that plays Dreykov in Black Widow. Never caught that.
Is that the villain?
Yeah, would not have caught that if IMDb did not help me out on that one. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
you wouldn't have got that when you were 10 because the Black Widow movie didn't exist.
Oh, exactly. But even like watching it again, like I didn't realize that that's who that was. But I'm gonna get into real quick,
Is that the
like
villain?
my movie making nerd brain and the fact that I just love the look of the alien and the look of the skulls.
Yeah,
I think
you
it's
wouldn't have caught
really
that when you were
awesome.
10
And
because
the fact that they did a lot
the
of it
Black
like
Widow movie
so
didn't exist.
practically and like a lot of most of this movie, other than like, that whole like end scene of like the aliens doing weird things and a lot of the green screen stuff. But like a lot of these like stunts and a lot of like the alien carcass that's there that looks just like awesome. Like a lot of it's practical. Like I know Shia LaBeouf
Hmm.
practiced fencing, and so did Kate Blanchett in order to do this movie. Like they didn't use stunt doubles. Um, they were like legitimately just like fencing, which is cool. Um, a lot of those stunts of Indy swinging, he's like, I don't know how old Harrison Ford was when he did this, but he was like doing those on his own stunts for parts of it. Now, granted, he's old and flimsy, so you can't like Hollywood physically can't let him do some of them. Um, but like from watching it, this movie looks really good, and I think they could have easily been like, well, it's 2008. Let's do like some outrageous like visual effects stuff for this movie that like we couldn't do when we were making the original three Indiana Jones movies. And like we're like we can do all these crazy stuff now. We can do more visual effects and we can do crazier like visual um make the aliens look so much cooler. We have them in the whole movie because we can do them for cheaper now. But I like that they stayed very um and I mean, I'm like I said, being a nerd. I just love that they stayed somewhat grounded when doing a movie when uh, visual effects and everything like that were a lot more developed than they were in when they made the original three movies. If that makes any sense to anyone, let me know because I end up just ranting about these things for a while, basically to myself. But yeah, we can I guess move on to the finding of the crystal skulls and the whole aliens bit with the Mayans, if you would like.
Hmm.
The one issue I have with like them sort of repeating the same sort of like skewed cultural lack of cultural relativism, I guess. Uh, it's like a that's just a term for them. The way that native cultures are tended to be portrayed, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
is that like
The one issue I have with like
trend and like archaeology
them sort
where
of
it's like
repeating the same sort of
this pyramid is built so
like
sophisticated,
skewed
only either a
cultural
white person could
lack
build
of
it
cultural
or aliens. Those are the two
relativism, I guess.
options when it's
Uh,
literally built by
it's
the
like a it's
civilization
just a
that they're
term for them. The way that native cultures are tended to
that's
be
like the entire
portrayed, I
premise of
guess,
the Ancient Aliens
is that like
History Channel.
Mm-hmm.
it falls in line with this weird like
And it's
trend
like
in like archaeology where it's like this
as much
this pyramid is built so sophisticated only either a white person could build this or aliens. Those are your two options when it's
coincides with
literally
conspiracy theories
built
can be
by
a
the
little
civilization that they're
unsettling.
Yeah.
critiquing or whatever.
And also how like
That's like the entire premise of the Ancient Aliens show on History Channel.
are they Mayans? Do they say that?
Um,
Uh,
and
I
it's
know
like
that like the El Dorado was supposed to have
as
been
fun
built
as it
by
is to see
Mayans, I think
aliens
is
in
what
this
he says,
franchise,
but I don't think they ever
it's I don't
call
know,
the people they meet there
the whole like
Mayans.
the fact
I'm
that it
not
like
really sure.
coincides with like conspiracy theories
Either
in
I
the
didn't
real world
catch
is
it or
kind
it's
of
not really said.
unsettling.
Um,
Um, and
it
also how
honestly
like
could be either.
the
They get one scene
Mayans are they Mayans? Do they say that?
attacking the crew, uh, for good reason because why are they there?
Yeah.
Why does Indiana Jones need to be there? And
Oh, yeah,
and like the scene where
don't
it's just
remember.
a shot
Okay.
of them having been killed by the Russians.
But
Um,
they get one scene
I don't know.
of like attacking
Ways or
the crew
ways to go about it. I
uh,
guess.
Yeah.
for good reason, because why are they there? why does Indiana Jones need to be there? And then like a scene where
Yeah.
there's just a shot of them having been killed by the Russians. I don't know. There just could have been some more interesting ways or ways to go about it, I guess.
Yeah. And
But these movies
as much as
exist
people
to
hate
have
aliens
weird
being in
doors
this,
opening in
I
ruins.
think I
and
said this to
sand
you too.
moving
Is like
in
I've heard people
interesting
be like,
ways.
"Well, there's just
And
too much
not
supernatural stuff
interesting,
in Temple of Doom
conflicts
that I
or
did, or not Temple of Doom, in
relationships
Crystal
with
Skull. Like I'm just not into the whole
indigenous people.
aliens thing. It's
So
just not super realistic."
that's what it
I'm
is.
just like,
It's
bro,
doing what it's setting
in
out to
Temple of Doom, this
do.
man literally rips another dude's heart out, and it keeps beating until he dies. In Raiders of the Lost Ark, it literally the Ark melts people's faces off. The Last Crusade has the Holy Grail, which grants you eternal life and can save you from bullet wounds to the abdomen. This is the least of your worries when it comes to like being unrealistic. When it comes to like this kind of stuff, so I think people were just finding a reason to hate this movie because it was new and it wasn't exactly what it was, 20 years ago. It's one of the it's
Keep in mind, there was, like, this was made in 2008. This is the same year that Christopher Nolan made The Dark Knight, which he'd already made Batman Begins, but Dark Knight was, like, the pinnacle of, like, this is what cool superheroes are.
yeah.
Everything is realistic, and that was not Nolan's intention. He wasn't trying to fix superhero stories. He was just like,
Keep in mind,
Batman was like,
there was like this is made in 2008. This is the same year that Christopher Nolan made The Dark Knight,
not as grounded.
which he'd already made Batman Begins, but Dark Knight was like the pinnacle of like this is what cool superheroes are.
So, like,
Everything
It
is
makes you
realistic,
think it's realistic.
and that was not Nolan's intention. He wasn't trying to fix superhero stories. He was just like, what if Batman was like Heat?
the trend was headed towards
And
could put these
also, I mean, even Iron Man,
centralize them within our own world.
not as grounded in realism, but like it's like set across the backdrop of
Steadfast with
the war in Afghanistan. So like there are different standards.
uncover mystery.
Yeah, there are different standards
Aliens
for movies than where like
have made these pyramids.
the trend was
So-
headed
So
towards.
does that mean that you think
What
that
if we
if
could
this
put
movie
these
was released in the
fantastical things
90s
and
or late
contextualize them
80s,
within our own
that
real
people
world?
wouldn't hate it as much as
And
they hate
this
it?
is a movie that's like staying steadfast with their.
Like if this movie
traditions, but no,
was
it's just a
the
pulp hero
exact same
story,
but came
and
out
he's gonna
like 2 or 3
uncover
years
mysteries,
after
and
The
one of those
Last
mysteries is
Crusade,
why aliens are have made this pyramid.
The time it's made is such a huge contributor into like why it is the way it is.
yeah.
Like the time jump and just everything about dealing with the past is made because the movie was made so late.
I don't know.
Because if
I
it was
think
made in like '92, they probably would have stayed within the '40s and sort of not done much different.
if this,
Yeah.
that's the thing though. Is I think
and
the time it's made is such a huge contributor into like why it is the way it is. Like the time jump and just everything about dealing with the past is those decisions were made because the movie was made so late. Whereas if it was made in like '92, they probably would have stayed within the '40s.
No,
And
that's like because Spielberg did not do this
not
movie.
done
We have not mentioned
much
that yet, but this is the only
different.
movie that Steven Spielberg did not direct.
And
So
what?
I
Yeah,
said
I mean,
we have not
Harrison
mentioned
Ford, I
yet.
don't
I'm
think he's ever gonna come
this
back
is
for
the
a
only
full
one that he
movie.
didn't direct, right?
that's
The Spielberg.
so if he ever, that's the thing, he would have like come back and like it would have been horrible
Yeah.
because by then Spielberg was on to Jurassic Park.
Oh wait, he did do this.
Um,
God, I'm so dumb. I was looking at the writers. I don't know why I thought that Steven Spielberg didn't direct this movie. I'm on another level, man. I'm on another
What?
level. It's okay. I looked it up. Steven Spielberg did direct this. I'm just on a whole nother level of stupid today, apparently.
No, he didn't.
Anyway, if there was a fourth movie,
How
in
do
the
you not-
90s, it would have either been
Bro, you're on the IMDb corner, right?
Harrison Ford, just mumbling his way.
He directed
filling
this.
it in because the direction is different or whatever.
Yeah.
Or he just like wouldn't have signed on and they would have like replaced him or something.
hmm
I think, yeah, I don't
My
think
Wi-Fi
they
is
can,
not
like,
working.
apply this movie
Yeah, probably
'Cause
not.
it would have been like Val Kilmer, Batman.
But anyway, if there was a fourth movie in the
Oh,
90s, it would
yeah,
have either
yeah,
been
you're right.
Harrison
Um,
Ford, you know,
yeah,
just
but no,
mumbling his
I
way,
do think that it just
phoning it
doesn't,
in because
and
the
we've said
direction
this
is
over and
different
over
or
again
whatever.
today, but it's just
Or
it
he just
gets
like
too
wouldn't have
much
signed on
crap
and they would have like replaced him or
for
something.
being a
Um,
pretty decent movie.
I think, yeah, I don't think you can really apply
It's at
this
least
movie to
better
the
than Temple
90s.
of Doom. It doesn't make me question
It
the
would have been, yeah,
characters.
because it would have been like
It doesn't
Val
do what
Kilmer
Willie made me
Batman.
do in Temple of Doom, where
You
I'm
know what I
literally
mean?
questioning why in the world she's doing what she's doing half the time, because she's just putting herself in worse situations throughout the movie. And it doesn't make sense. But what the characters do in this movie feels at least realistic. You know, like it feels like, oh, well, this is how you should be reacting to this. Like Mutt,
It's
yeah,
emotional stakes.
yeah, like Mutt does get himself in danger throughout this movie, but it's not just for the heck of it. It's because his mom is in danger and he wants to rescue his mom. Like, and also Oxley is a father figure to him, so he's trying to get him, save him too. So like things make sense, and people get themselves into bad situations for things that make sense. Um, and
There's an
I think
emotional
that
stakes.
is one just like a huge reason that this movie is much better than Temple of Doom, but still not as good as the other
But
two.
it's fun.
It is.
If you would have grown up with like no father, you probably would have aspired to be that kind of cool.
Yeah.
But instead, he's left with like no real guidance
Mm-hmm.
outside of his mom, and so naturally he falls in with the greaser crowd and wants to be that modern version of cool. But
Yeah.
You can't help but see the nerdiness that's like that he inherited from his father.
But it's fun because if you would have grown up with Indy,
Yeah.
like knowing Indy is his father,
It's like
you probably would have aspired to be that kind of cool. But instead, he's left with like no real guidance outside of his mom, and so naturally he falls in with the greaser crowd and wants to be that modern version of cool.
Yeah.
But you can't help but see the nerdiness that's like that he inherited from his father, where he's like into fencing and like is like
Mm-hmm.
into like that technique and like applies that to his brawler mindset as well. Like he's got both of it. He's got the street smarts and the like fencing academy smarts. But
Yo, that movie that scared the
that's
crap
that scene.
out of me when I was a kid.
That was when like the
See,
the
I was
largest
watching this
action
movie when I was, like,
sequence starts with
7.
the truck chase.
And I was
take over
watching
the
a dude
truck,
get
basically.
eaten by giant
Get out of the,
ants. You know how scared I was of
the
fire
shackles or
ants for
whatever,
like 3 years?
I forget what they were. And then
Like, oh my
that
gosh.
goes on for like 10, 15 minutes,
Scared the
right?
crap out
Until
of
they get to the
Anyway, it was your
ant-
favorite sequence. I'll
anthill.
stop interrupting.
And that is my favorite sequence, I think.
If your 6-year-old self was here, it's just like, no, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. It was scary.
Ants like bite people and get squashed.
It's also another Indiana Jones fighting Big Buff Goon, with dangerous
Just
stuff
like,
around
it was
him,
just really fun.
and then beating the goon into dangerous things.
if your
Which happens
6-year-old
in
self was
every
here,
movie.
it's like, no, it wasn't. And I'm just like, well, yeah, it was
It
fun,
is fun.
seeing those ants like bite people and get squashed.
Yeah.
Like the
And it was fun to see, like, starting to see the villains' hubris catch up to them. Because the Russians were definitely getting the worst when it came to the ants. And so, like, seeing them have to deal with that, which is like, okay, yeah, the cracks are starting.
It's fun though because the skull protected him from that ant, so it was really cool to see that dynamic.
About doing this.
And it was fun to see, like, starting to see the villains' hubris catch up to them.
First they drive it onto a tree,
Because the Russians were definitely getting
Yeah,
the worst
which is
fate
one of
when it
those
came to the
weird
ants.
moments
And
of
so, like,
CGI where
seeing
the
Irene
CGI
not
looks a
have to
little
deal with
funky.
that, which is like, okay,
When that
yeah,
tree
the cracks
just,
are
like,
starting to show. She's like
comes back and
in over her
smacks the
head because
Russians.
she's so arrogant
But no,
about
she just
doing
drives
this.
it off the cliff onto the tree.
And
So I
then
think
yeah,
it's
it all
pretty
gets
funny. But
solved
then
by
we
driving
get
the
the
truck
cool
into a
sequence
waterfall.
in the waterfall.
Well, first they drive it onto a tree
And
and
then
they
we
snap it back
discover
against the
the
Russians.
ancient city of Akator, which is the city of not actually the city of gold, but the city of treasure, with knowledge being the treasure. But there's also a lot of like treasure in the room that we find later on. But the city's not physically made of gold like they thought it was. It's more it's like the knowledge the aliens have brought to the native people, I guess. Um,
They're souvenirs from other civilizations.
yes, yeah. So I love the design of the city. I love the doors opening in fun ways. Having to use the skull to open the door. Um, and okay, I will always forever love the skeletons, the alien
souvenirs
skeletons
from other
in the circle
civilizations.
and all coming together into one. Like that's such a cool sequence. Like I don't care if it's unrealistic or if people don't like it because it's aliens. You know,
How do you do a realistic alien scene?
you don't. I'm just trying to dispose of any reason that people don't like this movie. I don't care about any of it. That sequence is cool. Irina starts to get all this information that the aliens know, and she just can't handle it. And then I guess a wormhole to another dimension is opened and starts dragging things through it, and they
How do
leave
you
on
do
their
a
giant
realistic
UFO,
alien scene?
and it's pretty awesome.
Another dimension, another dimension, another dimension, another dimension. Intergalactic. Okay, anyway.
I don't know what you're talking about, but for some reason it made me think of the Rick and Morty simulation inside a simulation. But anyway,
Spencer, I'm never referencing Rick and Morty, and I'm always referencing Beastie Boys.
oh yeah, see that's why. That's why I don't get it. All right, so
Another dimension.
but yeah,
Another
no,
dimension,
just
another
that
dimension,
last
another
sequence,
dimension.
and then
Intergalactic.
them
Okay,
just
anyway.
sitting back on the top of that mountain and watching it go, and he's like, they're leaving it and they're covering up what they did, and just seeing the water pour into the giant
Spencer,
crater
I'm
that
never
was left.
referencing Rick and Morty,
Also, I
and
guess
I'm
they
always
took the native
referencing
people
Beastie
with them.
Boys. They were already killed.
Oh, they were. That's right. The Russians killed them. Anyway,
That's the point. Maybe there's some like mothers and children back somewhere else,
maybe.
but or like elders. But yeah,
Yeah.
definitely at the end, I just feel like there's a huge so what of it. Like I don't like Indy didn't attain anything.
He got his job back.
He didn't save. They were already killed. He just had the. He just. I mean, I guess maybe there's some like mothers and children back somewhere else, maybe. But or like elders. But yeah, definitely at the end, I just feel like there's a huge so what of it. Like I don't like Indy didn't attain anything.
Yeah.
He didn't save anyone. He just
They
had
killed the commies,
he
man.
just
That's what
saw
it's
the
for,
experience through to its end,
I guess.
and
No,
didn't
I
run
mean,
away or
no, I
anything,
completely
but,
understand.
like,
There is like a big like
nothing
you didn't
good
really, he
happened
didn't really
other than
get
him
anything.
keeping
Nobody
his life.
got anything out of this other
And
than like I guess
entire
him
civilization
marrying
was
Marion at the end of
either
the
killed
movie,
by the Russians or destroyed by the
or
aliens. And
getting
it's
his
just
job
like,
back.
okay, what was
because-
this for?
Also, oh, that doesn't make sense either. If they're after him for something like ridiculous, right? But then like he's like, no, I was like searching for this ancient city, and they're like, where is it? And he's like, bro, aliens took it. And they're like, all right, cool, you can have your job back. Like what?
I think they were persuaded enough.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but now there's no other communist to prove that he was innocent because they're all dead.
But they'd assumed that he killed them or something.
Yeah, or something. Like that was, and I never really thought about it until just now. The fact that they gave him his job back with almost zero proof that he's not a communist.
I think
Because
they
nothing
were
came.
persuaded
nothing
enough
came from
by
that.
him just not being a communist, I guess.
That he's not a communist. Also, oh, look at him. He's got a son now, and he's married.
Yeah, no
But they
communist can
assumed
get
that he
married
killed
and have a
them or
kid.
something.
person.
Yeah, no communist can have a wife and kids. That's all it took for the. It's just like a Black Widow. The only thing it took for him to be a communist spy was to have a wife and two kids, and no one would suspect that
There's
he's a
plausible
communist.
deniability that he's not a communist. Also, oh, look at him. He's got a son now, and he's married. He's not just some bachelor. That means he's a good person. He deserves his job. But yeah, these movies.
And sort of they're not there for landing an emotional punch or even a punch of like, ooh, they saved the day.
Yeah, these movies are just good at like. Well, some of these movies are good at more than this, but like the consistent good thing is like.
The last thing that
really
I want to talk about real
throwing
quick is
with
what I mentioned to
strings of
you. This
scenes.
is really stupid, but
And
I said fate
sort
has
of they're
chosen the
not
next
there
Indiana
for
Jones
landing
when
an
the
emotional
wind
punch
blows the
or
door
even
open and blows the
a punch
fedora in
of like,
front of
ooh,
Mutt. He like picks it up, and right
they
before
saved
he
the
puts
day.
it on,
The
Indy's like, "Nah,
greatest
that's mine,"
outcome
and then
for
takes it from him.
the
And it's
largest
like,
amount of people was
is that
achieved. Like
teasing
that's
Mutt
not
is
even their
Indiana
fault.
Jones because
So
he's not in the new movie, the fifth movie that's coming out. Like he's not in it. I guess were they trying to tease a fifth movie with Mutt, or was it just like a funny little haha? Now he's his dad.
I mean, I feel like there's just not really much of a connection between the fourth and fifth movie because that was before Disney bought Lucasfilm,
True.
and like Crystal Skull was like Spielberg being like, I want to come back to this, whereas, I mean, he's no longer attached to the fifth one, but when he was, it was probably introduced first.
I mean, I feel like there's just not really much of a connection between the fourth and fifth movie because
Spielberg, are you down?
that was before Disney bought Lucasfilm,
We didn't have something
and
really in mind.
like
At least in
Crystal Skull was like Spielberg being like, I want to come back to this, whereas, I mean, he's no longer attached to the fifth one, but when he was, it was probably introduced first by Disney Lucasfilm being like, let's capitalize on Indiana Jones again. Spielberg, are you down? And he initially said yes, but he probably didn't have something particularly in mind, at least in comparison to all the other stuff he wants to do. And also, like, the failure of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull probably is deterring them from really connecting the two movies.
Yeah.
But anyway, they were definitely leaving the door open to further installments because at this point, it's, it was perfectly plausible that Shia LaBeouf would be one of the biggest, next movie stars. So it could have worked possibly, but given the trajectory of his life and career, it's not going to happen. With him coming back to Indy. But when we watched this together, I noted that it's cool that like there's potential for future stories with Mutt, but it's not suggesting that Mutt needs to live up to exactly who Indy is because Mutt has his own sort of iconic imagery now. Not iconic. That's that's an overstatement. He doesn't have a cultural sort of impact. But in terms of his aesthetic, and if you're imagining a scenario where he became the next Indy, he's got a different look about him. He's got the greased hair, leather jacket.
I agree. And
sword.
Before we kind of wrap it up, I want to talk to you
Those
about
are
this
all
little
different
article that I
elements that you
found
could play with
while kind of
for an
researching for
action
this
hero.
episode.
Then
And in all of
Indiana
the
Jones'
hate
fedora,
that's out there about
satchel,
this movie that you can find, there is,
and
and
whip
I normally don't
pistol,
like
so,
to bring up Screen Rant articles
I like
because
it that it's a
Screen
mix
Rant is
of,
just not where you should be getting your movie
living up to
opinions
Indy,
from.
but also something that.
Don't you like read their Mando recaps or something?
No, I did once, and then I realized they were like super like, oh, they're always like, this is great, this is the best thing ever. It's Star Wars, because Screen Rant like loves Star Wars and anything Star Wars. But
I don't know if it's just clickbait entirely, but they've got plenty of articles that really cater to.
But don't you like read their Mando recaps?
But
or
I do
something?
want to. I haven't read all the way through this article, but I want us to go through it and to see if we agree, because it says 10 ways that Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is actually underrated. and it's 10 good things about this movie, supposedly.
They
So number one being
I don't know if it's just clickbait entirely,
reunites
but
Indy and
they've got
Marion.
plenty of
I think
articles
we
that
can
really
agree that
cater
is a
to
great thing.
Last
She
Jedi
is the
haters,
best
but I
female
see what you mean.
protagonist to be alongside Indy. I love seeing them back reunited, so I would say yes.
Well, just period. She's one of the best.
Oh yeah,
In this series.
yeah. I love I think she was easily one of my favorite characters in the first movie, and then again in this one. Number two, the Nazis aren't the bad guys. It's so random, but I guess
That's a weird way of wording it. It's not
that's
because they're good in this movie. It's because there's different bad guys.
it's because it's different, yeah. Because the Nazis are the bad guys
Well,
in
just
Raiders
period. She's
and
one of the
in
best
The Last Crusade.
characters in
So I
this
guess
series.
it's nice.
Like me not knowing anything about the plot before going into this, if I heard just out of context someone saying the Nazis are not the bad guys in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I'd be like,
That's a weird way of wording it. It's not because
Yeah.
they're good in this movie. It's because there's different bad guys.
movie, and then you'd have to explain to me like,
No, it's just the Russians are the bad guys in this one. Yeah.
Like if you
So this says, fortunately, there
like
isn't a Nazi
me
on
not
site
knowing
in Kingdom of the
anything
Crystal
about the
Skull.
plot
They're instead
before
replaced
going
with
into
the
this,
Russians, and India is
if
going
I
up
heard
against the
just out of
KGB.
context someone saying the Nazis are not the bad guys.
So okay,
in Kingdom of the
there's a
Crystal
great
Skull,
new
I'd be
cast
like,
of supporting
what?
characters. I think that
Um,
there's plenty of
You're saying
supporting
there's
characters. I
the
think
Nazis
there's
were
better
right in
supporting
this
characters
movie,
in the other
and then you'd have to
movies
explain to me like, no, it's
than
the
in
Russians.
this movie. Like Sean Connery and you're telling me that what's his name? Whatever the professor we were just talking about, and Short Round and Sean Connery, and those aren't good supporting characters.
No.
Okay. Anyway, the waterfall scene is almost as good as anything from the original trilogy. What?
Wait, what was it?
It's saying that the waterfall scene is almost as good as anything from the original trilogy. I don't.
I really like it.
I really like it too, but I don't really get it. Anyway, yeah, I like it. I like that scene. It's good. It's a good scene. It still features the
The only thing explicitly wrong about it is calling it a trilogy. It's not really a trilogy.
Wait, what was it?
Yeah. Okay, this is true. It still features the same sense of humor. That is true. Indiana Jones definitely still has the same sense of humor.
I mean,
that he
I
does in
really
the other
like it,
movies.
so I don't have too much of a problem.
Number 5, Indy's detective work. They're saying that his detective work is
The only thing,
good. Really good.
the only thing explicitly wrong about it is calling it a trilogy,
especially
really
trying to figure out what Oxley is trying to say. Production design of Akator, yeah. Like I said, love it. I love the set designs and the skulls and the crystal skeleton boys. Yeah, I agree with that. Number 3, the way the quicksand scene intertwines action and family drama. We didn't talk about that scene. I do really like that scene, especially the call it a rope, because he refuses to grab a snake. That's funny. So I would agree that is definitely one of the better parts of this movie. All the things that make Indy iconic are still there. Are you gonna say what they are? He's still afraid of snakes. He still has a. Okay, no, it literally lists them out, and it's kind of stupid. He's still afraid of snakes. He still has a whip. He still has the same mannerisms.
Great scene.
And it doesn't make us, although it doesn't make sense as to why he's wearing the same outfit he was wearing 30 years earlier. As tastes and fashions change, as people get older, he's
Cool
still
hat.
dons the fedora.
Okay, but old people don't change their.
I was gonna say, old people don't. Yeah.
I like how I don't know. It's just like the Crystal Skull maintains an essential part of Indiana Jones' character.
He's still afraid of
really,
snakes.
really critical to his identity, which is sounding like Harrison Ford.
That's basically what it sounds. Because okay, if you're afraid of snakes at the age of 30,
but old
you're not
people
going to
don't
change
change
by
their
the time you're
style.
50, 60. Like if you're that afraid of snakes as he was in the first 3 movies,
I like
he's
how-
not going
I
to
don't know,
not
it's
be
just
afraid
like,
of snakes. That's kind
King
of
of
a
the Crystal
given.
Skull maintains a an essential part
guess
of
the whip.
Indiana Jones's
He doesn't really
character.
use his whip in this
You know,
movie,
really, really
He uses it,
critical
like,
to his identity,
yeah,
which is
like once.
sounding like Harrison
Like,
Ford.
he doesn't use it nearly as much in this movie. So,
To save Mac with it.
oh yeah, that's right. And so same mannerism. Yeah, yeah. And it says it's a perfect end for Indian audiences. So, referring to the wedding at the end, saying that it's good that he got
He
married,
swings on
and
it.
it says that he passed the torch to Mutt, which I don't
He tries
really
to
think
save
so. I don't
Mac
think
with
it
it.
passed the torch.
I'm kind of like growing more and more like it's not something that you need to be bitter about on like an individual every single movie sort of thing, but like the idea of like movies and stories just using weddings as a crutch to make it a happy ending.
Yeah.
It doesn't serve a story
I don't-
well all the time.
I'm kind of like
and also it
growing more and more like it's not something that you need to be bitter about
making people think that
on like an individual every single
the end all.
movie sort of thing, but like the
Yeah.
idea of like
There's so much more to
movies and stories just using weddings as a crutch to make it a happy ending.
Right article. I just
It doesn't serve a
Yeah,
story well
Screen
all
Rant,
the time,
because you're
makes you feel really
and also
bad
it
about
creates
Screen Rant.
just a
we're
network
gonna
of
rant
ideas
all
of
over
like
your article.
making people think that
Yeah,
marriage is like
we're so
the end all,
professional.
be all of life. That
So
I'm, like,
overall,
there's just so much more to,
I forgot how much I
to
enjoyed
life
this
than that.
movie,
So it's
and I know I said that about
take
Temple
that
of
Screen
Doom
Rant
as
article.
well.
I just
But,
showed you.
I think for the first time in ranking these movies, I
Bet you
would
feel
put it
real
above
dumb
Temple of Doom.
now. Screen Rant.
Mostly because I understand more of it now that I actually understand adult language, like you said at the beginning. So you said you would still put it above Temple of Doom?
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have anything else to say about it?
This is the point where I normally would like do a quote or something, but I've only seen it once and I don't remember anything.
I thought it was closer.
That's the part where they're going down.
Going over the waterfall the second time. Yeah, slightly different from the first and the third time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's it. That's all I have to say about it. So
Actually, my favorite part was like as that second drop was
This is the
happening.
point where I normally would like do a quote or something, but I've only
Struck
seen it
up
once and I
on
don't
Star.
remember anything.
That was my favorite moment.
okay, so actually my favorite quote
That's
when
the
I was
part where
little,
they're
I would quote it
going down the
constantly with my
waterfall.
mutt stuff
Second
on.
time.
I'd be like, I think you just brought a knife to a gunfight. I don't know why, but I would quote
No,
that
actually,
all the
my
time
favorite
when I was
part was
little.
like on as that second drop
So yeah,
was happening.
I think that's it.
Indy was
Thank
like,
you everybody for listening to this
"This is
episode.
struck up on
If
Star."
you would like to find our socials, you can find us on Instagram
That
and
was my
Twitter
favorite moment.
at Last Star Wars Pod, or on Facebook and YouTube at the Last Star Wars Podcast. If you'd like to email the show, you can email us at laststarwarspod@gmail.com. You should send us your opinions on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or any other Indiana Jones movie for that matter, and we will read them on the podcast. Also, let us know what kind of episodes you want to see, because if you let us know, we will probably do it because we're running out of ideas with no shows coming up. Also, speaking of shows coming up, if you would like to go to last episode, which came out yesterday, you can listen to our Boba Fett trailer review, Book of Boba Fett, and it's pretty good. We talked for 40 something minutes about a minute and a half long trailer. So go listen to that. It's pretty good, and it's kind of like a prequel to the series that we're going to do here in December regarding the Book of Boba Fett. Lastly, if you want to find another Star Wars podcast, you should go to starwarsnowthis.com. It's the first link in the description. You can find any kind of Star Wars podcast you want. Once again, thank you for listening to this episode of the Last Star Wars Podcast, and we'll see you next week.